It was a crisp Thursday morning in London, the kind of morning where the city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the first scandal to tumble out of Westminster and onto breakfast tables. Inside the gleaming studios of Good Morning Britain, cameras hummed, coffee machines sputtered, and the audience's anticipation buzzed like static. Today, the spotlight wasn't on politics as usual. It was on Ed Balls, the former Shadow Chancellor, a man known for his earnest demeanor and occasionally bewildering public appearances. But no one could have predicted the storm that was about to erupt. The debate had been billed as a nation at the crossroads: migration, economy, and identity. The panel was a who's who of fiery opinion. Seasoned journalists, a sociologist with a flair for dramatic phrasing, and a former diplomat who could recite UN statistics faster than a teleprompter. Ed Balls, smiling nervously, took his seat, straightening his tie with the precision of a man who had spent decades in the glare of public scrutiny. The debate started as one might expect, measured, thoughtful, a polite dance of facts and figures. But Ed, always eager to stake out his moral ground, soon diverged. With a sudden shift, he launched into a monologue that made the studio audience freeze in collective shock. "We must consider," he said, voice trembling with passion, "the cultural consequences of migration. Surely, if we allow unchecked inflows, we risk diluting our national identity, jeopardizing social cohesion, and," he paused, scanning the room like a general on a battlefield, "and even undermining the very fabric of British society." A beat of silence followed. Then the host, a veteran presenter with nerves of steel, blinked. Ed, that's, quite a statement," she said carefully, attempting to mask the alarm in her tone. But Ed, seemingly oblivious to the discomfort radiating from the panel, pressed on. He waved his hands like a conductor orchestrating doom, citing charts, historical anecdotes, and a particularly alarming statistic about the number of jellyfish in the English Channel. Though why jellyfish were relevant to migration remained a mystery. The internet, as it tends to do, exploded. Clips of Ed Balls' passionate and increasingly bizarre speech were uploaded faster than anyone could keep up. Headlines screamed, "Ed Balls' outrageous comments on GMB leave viewers stunned. Balls goes ballistic over migrants on breakfast TV." And the inevitable, "Time to axe Ed Balls." Twitter erupted in memes. One showed Ed wielding a giant net, captioned, "Catching migrants like jellyfish in the Channel." Another replaced his head with a lighthouse, beams of warning radiating over tiny paper boats labeled migrants. Inside the studio, producers whispered frantically. The director's monitor flashed red. Viewer complaints were pouring in. The social media team typed at lightning speed, drafting apologies and clarifications that felt increasingly futile. By 10:15 a.m., the phone lines were jammed. By 10:17, the boardroom was in crisis mode. Meanwhile, Ed, blissfully unaware of the storm, continued to lecture, his voice rising to a crescendo. "We must protect our heritage. We must safeguard our future. And, if that requires tough conversations..." He was cut off by a sharp, almost cinematic interruption. The host placed her hand firmly on the table. "Ed," she said, calm but firm, "perhaps we need to, take a moment." The camera cut to a commercial break, and the studio erupted into controlled chaos. Executives huddled in the corner, debating whether to issue an apology immediately or wait until the post-show analysis. In the green room, junior staffers whispered about how they'd never seen a breakfast show implode in real time. Social media outside the studio was a battlefield. Campaigns to #AxeEdBalls gained traction within minutes. Opinion pieces appeared with the precision of military strikes. One columnist declared, "Balls has outballed himself. His comments are indefensible." Another argued, in a tone somewhere between satire and horror, that Ed's reference to jellyfish was a metaphor for the moral peril of open borders. Ed's colleagues tried to intervene, gently steering him away from phrases like threat to British pudding and marmalade diplomacy. But by now he was unstoppable. He seemed to exist in a bubble where charts and metaphors collided, where metaphysical consequences of migration were as tangible as traffic cones on the M25. By lunchtime, the pressure on GMB was palpable. Senior executives convened an emergency meeting, their faces grave. The network had to act quickly, but carefully. They were caught in a dilemma. Ed Balls was a well-known public figure whose appearances drove ratings, but the backlash was escalating into a full-blown PR nightmare. A decision was made. Ed would be paused from live broadcasts pending review. The phrasing, deliberately bureaucratic, disguised the reality. He was, effectively, being axed. But when the statement hit the wires, Ed, in classic unflappable style, posted a tweet that seemed to miss the point entirely. Thrilled to share my insights on culture, economy, and jellyfish today. Dialogue is essential for democracy. The tweet, unsurprisingly, went viral. Memes multiplied exponentially. Journalists had a field day, and late-night comedians claimed Ed Balls as their personal muse. The phrase jellyfish diplomacy entered the national lexicon. Yet, amid the chaos, there was a strange, almost poetic justice. Ed Balls, a man who had once been a key player in Britain's financial policymaking, had become an accidental emblem of social media's absurdity. His earnestness, once admired, was now weaponized as comedy gold. And while he would not appear on GMB again, his cultural footprint had been cemented in ways no press release could have achieved. In the days that followed, commentators dissected every syllable. Newspapers debated whether his removal was censorship or a necessary corrective. Pundits argued about free speech, editorial responsibility, and the fine line between concern for national identity and xenophobia. And somewhere in the mix, Ed Balls himself gave a rare interview in which he seemed almost mystified by the uproar, gesturing vaguely towards his charts and notes. "It was just a discussion," he said earnestly, "about numbers and heritage and jellyfish." The nation, perhaps wisely, laughed. As for GMB, the studio slowly returned to normal. Coffee machines hummed, cameras rolled, and new guests were booked. The Ed Balls episode became legendary, taught in media studies classes as the perfect storm of political commentary, social media frenzy, and breakfast television drama. Executives still winced at the memory, but the incident also reminded them of a fundamental truth. In live TV, anything can happen, and sometimes the unexpected is unforgettable. In the end, Ed Balls' axing was not just a personnel decision, it was a cultural moment, a perfect storm of earnestness, absurdity, and the unforgiving gaze of the internet. And somewhere in the archives of GMB bloopers and national memes, the image of Ed Balls gesticulating wildly, preaching to the nation about jellyfish and migration, remained immortal.